Today I have got Jayachandran Palazhy, India's leading contemporary dancer and choreographer, with me. Jayachandran Palazhy has been instrumental in creating a thriving contemporary dance scene in India, working relentlessly for the past couple of decades, almost for 4 decades, 3 or 4 decades. At first based from Kerala and then moving on to Bangalore. Attakkalari, the India's pioneering contemporary dance organization, um, has been founded by Jayachandran Palazhy in 1992. So it's almost 3 decades now. So it would be quite interesting to take a look back upon the activities that Attakkalari has been doing. It's a long subject. In fact, it's a long history. But I think it would be very interesting to take a sneak peek at what has been happening and where Attakkalari is positioned now, and what are the activities that Attakkalari is planning to take the contemporary dance scene in India ahead. Now Attakkalari has been planning to hold a workshop in Kerala, from where it all started. So അപ്പൊ ഈ ഒരു ബാക്ക്ഗ്രൗണ്ടില് എന്താണ് ആട്ടക്കളരിയുടെ ഒരു അടുത്ത പ്രോജക്റ്റുകൾ? അപ്പൊ കേരളത്തിൽ ഇപ്പൊ ഈ വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു ബാക്ക്ഗ്രൗണ്ട് എന്താണ്? അതിനെ കുറിച്ചിട്ട് ലെറ്റ് us see what Jayachandran Palazhy has got to tell us.
Thank you, Renu. Thank you also for all the audiences in Kerala and across India for joining this conversation with my good friend Renu Ramanath, who is also an eminent critic for performing arts, not only dance, but also theatre and other traditional forms as well. So today, what I thought maybe we could talk is probably the training strategies in somatic expressions in India, particularly in view of the developing transdisciplinary practices that are taking root in India and across the globe, now more in the advent of AI and immersive technologies and interactive technologies. So, അപ്പോൾ ഈ പുതിയ കാലത്തിലെ ഈ മുന്നോക്കം ടെക്നോളജിയുടെ ഒരു ചിലപ്പോൾ തോന്നും അതിപ്രസരാണെന്ന്, പക്ഷെ ടെക്നോളജിയുടെ ഒരു മുൻതൂക്കമുള്ള പല വർക്കുകളും എസ്പെഷ്യലി ട്രാൻസ്ഡിസിപ്ലിനറി ആയിട്ടുള്ള വർക്കുകളുടെ ഒരു തയ്യാറെടുപ്പിന് ഒരു ഇന്നത്തെ ഒരു യുവ കലാകാരന് വേണ്ട അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കലാകാരിക്ക് വേണ്ട വിഭാവനങ്ങളും ശാരീരികമായിട്ടുള്ള പല സങ്കേതങ്ങളും എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് അതിനെയൊക്കെ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തുന്ന ഒരു വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിലാണ് കേരളത്തിലെ കേരള സംഗീത നാടക അക്കാദമി ആയിട്ടും കേരള ലളിത കലാ അക്കാദമി ആയിട്ട് ചേർന്നിട്ട് തൃശ്ശൂരിൽ 22-ാം തീയതി ജൂലൈ 22-ാം തീയതി, കൊച്ചിയിലെ ഞായറാഴ്ച 23-ാം തീയതി ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് 3 മണി മുതൽ ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് 2 മണി മുതൽ 5 മണി വരെ ചവറ കൾച്ചറൽ സെന്ററിൽ വെച്ചും ഈ വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. So what I'm trying to say is there will be 2 workshops in Thrissur on 22nd of July and in Chavara Cultural Centre in Kochi on 23rd from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. The focus of these workshops are, we call it an open day with Attakkalari, an immersive contemporary movement experience. So as you know, Renu, Attakkalari has been really working on trying to unearth the concepts of body and principles of movement from Indian traditions. And over the years, I've been working across the globe, and many years in the UK, almost more than 14 years, and then traveled different parts of the world, trying to explore, research, experiment with different forms and different artists who are working in these somatic expressions, as well as in other disciplines like theatre, design, music, and even film and video. So from these experiences and the knowledge and insight I have gathered, I feel it is time to share with as many people as possible, and maybe it will benefit the evolution of a transdisciplinary somatic expression.
Can I interrupt a little bit? Can
Yeah.
you please just explain in a very brief manner the term transdisciplinary? It's actually for our lay audience who are not familiar with the the discourse as such.
Over. What I would say is there are categories in India. We used to call many of our forms as combined art forms. Like, for example, take Kudiyattam or Kathakali. There are many elements coming together: music, libretto, literature, and costumes, and and physical performance all together. But then there over last quite a few decades and centuries, particularly in Europe, and through that in India too, there was quite a lot of compartmentalization. Music separate, dance separate, theater separate, film, all of these separate art forms. But now there is a kind of renewed interest in, if one were to collaborate and dabbled maybe in creatively in these disciplines and bring as an expression, bringing the diverse syntax, grammar, and structures of these forms and expressive mode. So the kind of how do I say, the artistic kind of processing will involve the process of these different disciplines, and hence the final result, the images or the communication we are engaging with the artist, with the dancer, with the audience, also will include these elements of these things. So it is not neither one form or the other, but it transcends one art form and develop a kind of a combined effort of these many art forms. That's what I would say, transdisciplinary.
Thank you so much, Jayan. And so how would you describe Attakkalari's process, the training process, the physical training process that Attakkalari has evolved over the decades?
See, it has been our keen interest to unearth the concepts governing the physical concepts of body governing many of the Indian somatic and performance traditions, plus the principles of movement embedded in them. So for this one, we first started a research project called unearthing the teaching methodology in performing arts, particularly in Kerala, for example. Then we went on to create this very seminal, quite landmark archive on Indian somatic expressions called Nagarika, which is roughly could be translated as of civilizational dimension. And we have created one on Bharatanatyam, one on Kalaripayattu, and we are in the process of documenting Devarattam and also contemporary works of art. And the reason of why, when we do these things, what we are understanding is the thoughts and concepts and principles that goes into making a work of art or goes into the solidification of a particular art form, particular performance form, whether it is Bharatanatyam, whether it is a martial tradition like Kalaripayattu, or a folk tradition, folk and martial tradition like the Devarattam. So these semiotic wisdom will have a huge implication in terms of how we develop our contemporary movement idiom, and how we process our contemporary experiences, and how do we process our memories as well as our imagination. So that so then when you process the contemporary experiences, memories, and imagination, and with the principles and concept from these embedded in our traditional form, then what we will have, we'll have a kind of expression which is gravitating towards an evolving Indian identity or evolving Indian identities. So that is not limited by a specific form or specific classical form or folk form or any of this form, but actually trying to evolve a new form, but rooted in our tradition.
So how do you plan to bring these training practices, these training methodologies into the when you work with the new generation? Because I actually have in mind the new generation of our Indian youngsters who are I think they are growing up and they are exposed to a world that is totally different from our perspective of and they have a totally different notion of tradition, what makes tradition and what makes modernity, because they are creating their own traditions and their own modernities these days. And how do you find the process of working with the new generation, because they have their own, they may be having their own confusions and their own chaos and their own notions of body practices. So I'm really curious to see how we can bring out about this traditional and the merger of tradition and modernity into training the new generation.
Yes, I think if you look at sports, for example, or sports in general, then you would see the physical language has really improved over the years.
Yeah.
And you see, but there are, if you look at football, for example, there are some of the magic Maradona has done many, many years ago, which still is a magic. So,
Yeah.
so what the process of physical training, which is a very human trait, unlike animals, we are able to train and better our physicality because it's not preordained or pre-programmed like in the animals. So we can actually find something or imagine a new movement and develop something. Or in other words, we can rewire our body. But the intense focus and kind of perseverance and this tenacity is very important in order to achieve any kind of physical kind of level, whether it is in the sports or in performing arts, even for singers or musicians. So from that perspective, what we need to do is look at, now the many more avenues of information. But how do we convert this information into actually as a knowledge, let alone wisdom?
That's very important.
Yeah,
Converting information into knowledge.
Yeah, so that which means the processing these things, that artistic mediation and the processing and the training with that very focused manner, and then transform one's own body. That will take time. So in the beginning, in the era of when we have this huge presence of social media, any little thing you want to put it up in the social media, just I have done that, I had this wonderful breakfast or this dinner, or I met this friend, all of that part of a performative language now, in a way, of a different kind. So instead, if you look at people who have really achieved, they have devoted time in pursuing something, and that opportunity to develop much more is there. Only thing, you have to find that time to focus and that persevere on something and build bit by bit. Sometimes you feel body is archaic because it's not able to kind of cope up with the increasing development in augmented augmented kind of facilities that our devices offer us today. So, but if the body has to really transform itself, then it needs very dedicated time. And dance or sports and things like that, we receive it through empathy, through mirror neurons. So there is no shortcut for this. One has to yet to find stamina pills or a Bharatanatyam pill or a Kalaripayattu. There's nothing like that. So you just have to persevere and really focus and transform yourself. And the musculature, the joints, all of that will take time to transform themselves, and body takes time to rewire itself. And everything is possible, but
Yeah.
meticulous training is needed, still needed.
I remember that you were always interested in uh, merging dance and sports, and you were a football player.
No, I was an athlete and a shuttle
Yeah,
badminton
that's
player and a
great.
cricketer. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting to, kind of blend. And I was just going through the back files of the body seminar that Attakkalari had organized in 99 in Bangalore, when I think it was also attended by one sports medicine practitioner also.
Yeah.
And so I find it very interesting when you speak about dance and sports together. Yeah, I'm sorry. And yeah, I was thinking that, during the late 90s, when we were trying to uh, popularize or trying to introduce contemporary dance in Kerala, the whole concept of body or the whole concept of dance was something totally different at that period. And so how do you find the change? How do you find if there is a change, how the change has happened? Or is there a more acceptance for contemporary dance in India in general and in Kerala?
I have a feeling on a gut level, young people are much more fascinated and much more interested in contemporary dance because, dance or performance in general, we receive on a gut level, but also on an intellectual level. So our perceptions and the what and the history of viewing, all of that plays a role. But on the gut level, we have that urge to really move, and the kind of movements we experience today is not necessarily confined to a particular village or a particular locality. So that in itself is a gateway for contemporary dance. And I feel when I look at dancers coming together today, they have the potential. What probably they lack sometimes is the ability to focus. If somebody can find that, and then they can reach really, really big heights. That I think that is not anybody's fault. It is because of the over availability of too much information, and to the point that it's a noise or a cacophony. So then, amidst all that, how do you find a time to focus? And many people also, many thinkers practice meditation or actually dance in itself is a dynamic meditation, I would say, because you have to focus your mind, you have to breathe properly. That's a fundamental aspect of meditation. So these things are very important. What we are trying to do is, now many youngsters probably won't have the access to some of our rich traditions, which means you get alienated from your own history, your own heritage. So then you become, the information coming to you becomes secondary, instead, or second hand sometimes. So instead, how do you access this information? And people don't have time to spend, say, 20 years to study Kathakali or, and that is probably unrealistic. So you have to find new ways of accessing this information, but without diluting it, without actually making a caricature out of it, but actually going into the root. So over the years, what I have found is if you offer many of these things, traditionally we used to say if you are studying one form, you shouldn't study other things. What we have found is actually if you have an analytical way of studying and a conceptual way of learning, particularly in a student-centered manner. So, and if you offer many of these disciplines together, what happens is actually you are able to um, absorb and make your own these information as a knowledge system. Because for example, traditionally Kalaripayattu will take quite a lot of time, or Bharatanatyam take quite a lot of time. But through Attakkalari's diploma in movement arts and pedagogy, what we have seen is they are able to achieve far more than they just enroll in a traditional class. Because if we have Bharatanatyam class in first year, in 1 year, they are able to do, not only Adavus and Corveys and everything, but also Alaripu, Jatiswaram, Tilana, and sometimes even their own compositions as well. So this is a huge achievement. I wouldn't say they're perfect, but I'm saying is they are able to achieve a certain level in such a short time. Similarly with the Kalaripayat, we have seen. And contemporary movement, when you learn, what it does is actually you are able to understand where a movement originates. How is it passing through your body? What is its intention? What is the quality of the movement? How do you change direction? What are the levels? How do you propel? What is accent? Many aspects. So these analytical way, conceptual way of learning helps you to really improve very quickly. But and if you are a focused student, there is no limit to the learning. So that's why many of the youngsters who come to Attakkalari, 70% of our the people who have passed through our diploma has gone abroad. 70%. This is a huge.
Coming to that point, because I'm curious to know how the students who pass out of Attakkalari, how they fare, where they go, how are they developing further?
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. So 70% of them have gone further studies. Some of them are working abroad, and many of them have started their own studios. They choreograph, they do their own performances. Many teach, because now what is also happening is that's why we have included this idea of pedagogy in the course. The reason is that the national curriculum, the newly introduced national curriculum, is adopted by many of the universities and schools, and in fact, it is going to be now compulsory. So, which means there is a huge lacunae in terms of qualified teachers for the schools and the university level, and the teachers we have produced, or the dancers we have produced, they are all, if they are living in Bangalore, they are all employed in the international schools or universities or colleges. And there is a huge demand for us to provide such sessions for the mini universities, including IIT, including Srishti, including Manipal University, RV University, National School of Drama, many, and NIFT. So many of these schools and universities, they are asking us to create credit courses for them. Similarly, internationally also, we have been teaching in many universities.
So that means that the students are able to make a career in dance.
Absolutely. Students are able to make a career. This is a teaching aspect. Now they are saying you don't have to have a PhD to teach in the universities. You have to have a PhD if you have to guide a PhD student. But to teach in the universities, these traditional qualifications are now valid. And Attakkalari diploma is really highly regarded, not only in India, across the globe. So teaching is one, but as I told you, there are choreographers, there are dancers, there are people who working with the television, people working with in fashion industry, fitness industry. So there are, there are many of these new brands of fitness training. So many of them, what they say, oh, dancers from Attakkalari, we can train them in whichever form we want. And that means the training strategy we adopt is not only for just as to make a performer or a choreographer, but they are able to find employment and a career in many different ways.
Okay. Okay. I think we can have one more question. Like you mentioned about the importance of dance in the fitness segment. And so how do you see the possibility of dance as a in healing?
Yeah, very good question. So see, neuroscience has proven now that dance and to a certain extent playing music really opens up new neural channels. And it also helps us to have a brain and neuroplasticity. So which means even for things like Parkinson's or dementia or things like that, they are saying because of the new neural channels are opened, you are able to not only stop the advance of these diseases, but actually reverse some of the effect. And because a dancer has to occupy or inhabit in multiple realms at the same time. So, for example, a small movement like this, and if I move the hand generally, so this micro movement and this macro movement together, you have to think about. These are all spaces. Same with if you are traveling in a big stage, you have to think about different locations in the stage. You have to think about also the fellow artists. So you might have a duet, somebody might be jumping and you have to catch them, or you have to work with the music, or sometimes you have to work with the interactive technology, the projections and things like that. So there are many aspects you have to work on the spot. So that allows you to really develop your ability to the cognition capacity, your memory, and also your imagination. So in a way, not only the physical aspect of keeping fit and being agile and young, but also in terms of our mental capabilities, both memory and cognition and imagination. So all of that are enhanced by the practice of dance.
So dance can also be an important part of therapy in general.
Yeah. That's very true because, here I've been talking to Dr. Shekhar Sheshadri from the NIMHANS. So he is a great advocate. So I would say, like we had in Kerala, traditionally, every child used to go to a Kalari school. In many of the South Indian places, many of the women went to Bharatanatyam classes at the time. And many of the, not only women, but men also, and because that's why they became Nattuvanars and all. And many people in Kerala, in the off season, when there is no farming or agriculture, they became Kathakali artists and Kudiyattam practitioners or music, chenda and other things. So this was integral as part of our socio-religious system. Now, in the advent of new cities, we have to provide this avenue for youngsters. That's the role of an organization like Attakkalari, which provides these multiple realms, not only training, but also performances, international festivals, archival projects, and incubation center for arts and media. So many aspects we are trying to do. And I think over the years, people are now saying it has really created a new generation of artists in India. And many people who visit India often say this. When they go to different platforms, oh, dancers came from Attakkalari. So which is a proud moment for all of us who are working at Attakkalari, including you, I would say.
Yeah, of course. Then one more question. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
Do you think anybody can dance? Like, I mean, anyone with any type of body?
See, dance inhabits in your imagination. So if you have imagination, you are a dancer. But to physicalize dance, you just have to look for it. Everybody has a dancer in themselves. You just have to look for it and find it. And the level of physical virtuosity one shouldn't aspire for. Every movement is unique. So every person is unique. So if you are dancing, it will be uniquely your dance. And that is something one has to celebrate. So there is no ideal dancer. There is no ideal dance. It is every dance is unique, and we should celebrate it. We should have a garden of multiple flowers. That's what my imagination.
That's very beautiful. And I think we can end on this note. It was a very beautiful and exciting experience having this conversation with you. And let us hope Attakkalari will forge ahead and create a multiple garden, a garden of many flowers of dance. Thank you, Jayan.
Thank you, Renu. Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.